just wanted to share some of the ways that we think we've been able to be successful in accomplishing a lot of things at South Jordan. A lot of it has to do with running in your lanes, if I can use that analogy a little bit. So if you're running down the track with a whole track of people and you're trying to get to the finish line and nobody's in your lane, you can just run straight and run clean, right? But when somebody starts running over into your lane or impeding you or bumping into you and disrupting you, then it becomes a different kind of a race, doesn't it? So one of the things that I think is the secret sauce that makes us successful is when we understand our roles, what we do, what we play, how does it work, and every city is probably just a little bit different than the next in that regard. So, as a city manager, in our city of South Jordan, I get my duties and responsibilities from an ordinance. That ordinance is passed by the city council, who then sets in law what my duties are. And I don't know how it works in all of your communities, but I'm sure there's something similar to that nature. The code also explains what the duties of the mayor is and the duties of the council. So we all kind of know what we're responsible to do, and the secret is how do you go about doing that without being disruptive to one another, or how do you do that in a way that you can be productive and get things done? Right, Mayor?
Yeah. Okay, so on that note, none of the residents in your city know the difference between what the city manager's role is and what the mayor's role is. There might be a few, but for the most part, if people have a concern, they don't look up contact information for the city manager. They might not even realize that there's a city manager. Who do they contact? Their council representative or the mayor, right? And they have a concern. It's our job to know what is ours to oversee, what are our responsibilities and what are their responsibilities. It's, I don't know if everyone in this room even has a city administrator. There's different forms of government, but it really is a blessing for our communities to have sophisticated professional staff, because as elected officials and newly elected officials, we are not experts in all of these areas. And so to rely on the expertise of our staff who's been there longer than we have, who this is what they have been specifically trained for, is key. One of the key points that I would bring out is to not let egos get in the way of the relationship. I think it's really important, as Gary said, to stay in our lane. My role as mayor is different than his as administrator. Let me give you an example. I am familiar with a couple of different communities across the state who over the course of time have had a newly elected mayor, this has happened in the past, who has gone into City Hall and determined it is their role to look at all the staff who's there and go, I don't know that we need you. I'm not sure that we need that. This seems redundant here. And that was not their role. They are not a strong mayor form of government. They're a council manager form of government, and that is not their role. In our city, which may be different for some of you, in our city, the staff reports to the city manager. The city manager reports to the council and the mayor. And so it would never be my role to walk in and say, I don't like how she does her job, she's out. That would not be, that's not my role. And it's important that we recognize what our role is and what it isn't. And we each have an important role to play. I think the biggest thing we can do is be supportive of each other. When we respect each other and the job that we each do. When I came into this, the first thing Gary said to me was, you have my word that I will never do anything to embarrass this city I will never do anything to make this city look bad, and I will never do anything to embarrass you. I will do everything I can to be supportive of you. And I told him the same thing. And I think that's a big part of why we've been able to work together. If we can let egos go, if we can be willing to be humble and say, can you explain this to me? I don't understand how this works. Just because we've been elected to a position doesn't mean we're automatically going to understand anything, everything, and we are okay to ask questions. In fact, it's appreciated, it's encouraged, and it helps the city work better, benefiting our residents better. And you know, when I contact our staff, if I send an email, if I forward an email on to somebody on the staff that came from a resident with a request or a question, if I forward that email on to a member of the staff, whether it's a director of our parks department or any of those, our police chief or somebody, I will copy the city manager on that. That's a sign of respect that he deserves. Also, if he's working on something that in any way, shape, or form would be appropriate for me to know about, would be something I may have to speak to, something I would be asked about, he keeps me very 100% in the know as well. We work really well together, but that open communication and no egos and doing what we can to help each other, it really makes a difference. And there are cities that have that kind of relationship and cities that don't. And the outcomes really affect the residents.
Yeah, I think it would be, as the mayor talked about, coming over and saying something about the staff or some type of part of the operation, you know, maybe you should use a different kind of asphalt than that or something like that. It would be the same as me going into their legislative discretion and saying, I don't think you should zone that property that way. Or do something overtly in order to make that not happen. Or try to divert that. It would be the same thing. There are certain lines of legislative discretion that this body has that I don't. And I think that's helpful. I think talking and having honest dialogue with one another. I mean, I don't think we've agreed on everything all the time, but we certainly come away, the way that we've been able to discuss things is that we understand each other's point of view and maybe why we would have a different perspective on that. And ultimately, in our form of government, our mayor does not vote, but she certainly has a high amount of influence on how maybe council members do vote. I think it is important to maybe answer questions that you might have of how, what may become to your mind in your certain communities that maybe we can help you understand, or particularly anybody that has not ever served before and has been elected or something. We're happy to do that.
Okay, surely there have to be questions.
Yeah, how do you deal with, as a city council member, if we're not getting response or feedback from city personnel in different departments when we're trying to answer constituents' questions or not? You're saying don't go into those departments directly. You work that through the city manager, and if we're not getting a response from the city manager, how do we handle that?
So I guess everyone's a little bit different. So the top directors in our city, I give them carte blanche to talk to council members. And I don't say you can't talk to those people without talking to me. I mean, the mayor's honest about saying she copies me on questions that go to, say, our police chief or our fire chief or someone like that. But reality is I'm not overly worried that they have a conversation with a department director. Answering questions to me and informing and educating, those are all the right things to do. Maybe directing someone's work. Now, that's getting a little bit over in kind of the gray area, right? So I don't expect that the elected body would direct my staff in how to do something. We would probably have a discussion about how we would want to do something, or it might come up. But educating, informing, helping them understand process, or any of those kinds of things are really on the table in our shop and how we do things. And so,
and if you find that staff is not being responsive, and the city manager is also not being responsive, that's a discussion to have as a council, because if your city manager reports to the council, then that's a discussion that you would have to have as a council together. What are your concerns with if it's a lack of interaction or a response from the city manager, and then that's a conversation as a council I would unitedly have with the city manager specifically, bring up your specific concerns.
What advice would you give us as we're going in with probably brand new people in every single role, meeting with people that have been there, or how would you start us out on a good foot as we start to meet and work together?
I think the start to meet is a really good way to start. As I said, having professional staff there is invaluable, right? It's our residents that benefit from having such good people employed by the city to help run the city. It's also important that they elect people who are going to represent their views and help guide the direction for the future of your community. Sit down and talk to them. Ask how you can be helpful to them. How can I help you succeed? And they'll ask, what can I do to help you succeed? I'd be shocked if they didn't ask you that. But if you really come to understand what they do and why it's important, then if you get concerns from a constituent saying, this is not okay, this happened and it's really not okay, you will always have more information than they do about it. It will help you. That would be a piece of advice I have too. When you do get an email or a phone call from a constituent and they're totally upset about something, there's always two sides to a story. So when you get a complaint about something that happened or didn't happen in the city and how it happened and how your staff handled it, instead of immediately a knee-jerk reaction, because if that's exactly how it happened, perhaps you should go in pretty upset. But my experience has been 100% of the time that's not exactly how it happened. And so before you go in to really lay loose on the staff that this was mishandled or this should have been taken care of or why was this done or not done in this way, get both sides of the story. Ask about it in a way that's not accusatory so that you can hear what the staff's experience, whether it's with the police or any department. It will help give you a better picture of really what may have happened. There's always two sides to every story, and the side involved from the people who work for the city is a good balance to the side that you heard from the resident, and then that will help you really come to a better conclusion and understanding. That would be my heartfelt request. Get both sides to a story before you go in, before you answer a constituent, before you reply to them, before you say, well then this is what we're going to do, before you contact the rest of your council and say, did you know this happened? We've got to deal with this. Make sure that you talk to the people involved from the city's perspective as well.
I think we've all worked in organizations that are founded in trust. It's a key piece of the glue that holds it all together. And for me, if we make a mistake, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. Things happen. As long as we have humans out there working, we're going to have problems and we're going to have mistakes, and things are not going to always go the right way. And just because I got the title of city manager, I didn't become an all-knowing Oz. I don't know everything, and that's why I surround myself with other great professionals. But what I really like in our relationship that I have with my bosses, the council and the mayor, is that when we make a mistake, I own it. I raise my hand and say, yep, that was our fault. That was my deal, I'll handle it. And we fix it. And there are things, though, when the mayor has other things to do that are out there on the vision side of it, and the policy-making part of her job, and she's not loaded down or bogged down in personnel matters or dealing with process issues or whatever else might be out there, then she's more apt to be able to do the job that she's been asked and tasked with. And that is, setting the vision for our community along with our other members of our elected body. And so that's kind of how we work together is even when it comes to the tricky part of budgeting. Let's face it, that's one of the key things that we do. And how do you approach that? And that's where it can get a little dicey sometimes. Not everybody agrees on how to spend limited resources. And so our approach has always been, in our form of government, it works this way really well. The city manager prepares the information. We share it in multiple ways and strategies. But we base all of our funding mechanisms off sound strategic planning. So we have a strategic plan that we worked on together. This body came up with key strategic priorities. Those priorities now become what our budget holds up. So if our budget doesn't support one of the 8 key priorities that this council set, then why are we spending money doing it? So then we work, all the way down from the macro to the very minute stuff, and the micro, and all of those micro things lead up and then support the strategic goals and objectives that these individuals set. And that's why I think we have a successful budget process too. Everyone's involved in it. There isn't a mine or yours, it's ours. It's one set of resources to set up one certain part of the goals and mission of what we're trying to accomplish.
So, as Cameron mentioned, I just had the opportunity to spend Thursday in the White House representing our city and every community, local community in the state of Utah, at discussions with administration and Vice President Pence and other mayors from 23 of the states from around the country. There were about 50 of us there having this opportunity. And one of the takeaways I got was later that evening I had dinner with 5 other mayors who I had just met. And one of them did not have a good relationship with her staff, and there were a lot of concerns. They're from a smaller community in Texas, but she was desperate for help, and we talked about that. So I recognize not everyone has the same situation that we are very fortunate to have in South Jordan right now. That being the case, if you find yourself in that kind of situation, our advice to her was, have you established a code of ethics that every member of the council and your staff will sign? Perhaps start there. Do you have a mission statement for your city or a vision for your city that you've documented through words that can be displayed, that has been approved by the council and determined by the council, but also with your staff? Have you come up with a vision? There are things that can be done to try to unify and get people on the same page, so that at the very least, everyone is willing to sign this code of ethics. That's a good thing. And if problems continue, it's not a perfect world, and if you have problems that persist, having a signed code of ethics to go back to is helpful when nothing else seems to help. So those were some of the advice pieces that we gave to her, and she was really grateful for that, because they've got some real challenges in her community. And if you find yourself in a similar situation to that, those are some places that maybe you could start.
So in talking about good communication, one thing that in West Jordan that we're going to be discussing fairly soon here is how often we should meet outside of our regular council meetings to have work sessions. How often do you do that with staff and other council members?
So we have 2 city council meetings a month, the first and third Tuesday of every month. And we start at 6:30 and we go, sometimes we go really late, but
We have a study session before.
There's a study session before every city council meeting that starts at 4:30. So for almost 2 hours, we have study session. Prior to that meeting, I meet with our city manager, the assistant city manager, and our city attorney. So we meet from 3 o'clock until 4:30. Then from 4:30 to almost 6:30, to shy of 6:30, we have a work meeting. Then 6:30 on is when we have our regular city council meeting. We do that twice a month.
But I will say this, and everyone's going to be a little bit different because most of the mayors and elected people are part-time. You got day jobs, you have real work to do, and people have things that are going on in their lives. But fortunately for us and our circumstances, I've been able, over my years of working here, have mayors that have either worked in the city, or in this case, her full-time job is being mayor. So we often cross paths, even if it's for just a few moments in the day. Sometimes it's a couple times a week, and sometimes it's once. Sometimes, but when we do, we try to catch up. I have a note list that I have. I try to touch base with her, and a lot of times we use electronic communication. We're texting one another, or things like that, or it's a quick phone call. Hey, Mayor, just want to give you a heads up about this, or that question you asked me a few days ago, or something like that is constantly happening in a way. The formal process that the mayor outlined just a minute ago is what we do on a kind of more formal basis, but there's lots of informal discussions that we have about different things that sometimes she's in a meeting somewhere else outside of the city and is texting me about a question that was raised in the meeting, and I'm able to respond or give her whatever answer she's looking for. So I think that's helpful, that we're constantly, really, in today's world, you're constantly kind of communicating one way or the other, with one form or another.
Do you find that format creates a lot of duplicity, and there's a lot of kind of overlap and repeating?
For us, it's been very beneficial. It's actually made our council meeting run a lot smoother. Because when we have our work meeting, we have the opportunity for the mayor and council to report or ask questions to each other, let us know what's going on. Has anybody encountered something that's a concern? So we always have a little bit of time blocked for that. And then we do a high-level overview of what's on the agenda. We already have an executive summary that our staff has taken the time to send out. Everybody has had the agenda since it's been posted and it's been read. Hopefully the executive summary's been read. Please, that's another piece of advice that I would give is if you're going to go into a city council meeting, please be prepared to know what's on your agenda and take the time to do your due diligence. It does take time, and this is volunteer time that you're going to be giving. But if you're going to be voting on zoning or changing something, go take a look at it and see what it is and understand what it is that you're getting into. And along with that, we take the time to go through our agenda during the work meeting to see if there are any additional questions besides the emails that have gone back and forth. We have all of our senior staff there. Does the council have any specific questions? Make sure people are getting those answered. These are open public meetings that people can attend. Those are being answered and they're on the record. And then when we go into our regular meeting, we'll have council members who will say, so this is a question I had about this, and this was the answer, so that they still have the chance to say what their questions were. So nobody thinks, what is this, just a rubber stamp? They're not asking anything. That's not the case at all. But some of the things that are going to take more time, they've had the chance to really vet and go through and understand. It has really helped our council meetings to become more streamlined and to work. That little bit of time investment has been really helpful.
So another thing that I think happens in our work meeting is the mayor gets an opportunity to talk to the council. So one of the agenda items in that work meeting is a standing item it's an update from the mayor. This gives the mayor an opportunity to talk to the council about all the activities that she's been involved with, and they get to discuss amongst themselves. If I'm at a league policy meeting, how do you want me to respond to these or these? And they talk a little bit about that in that work session where, or I was at this meeting and here's what I said. Does anybody have concern about how I'm representing the city in this scenario? And so they have a half an hour or so in that meeting to kind of understand what you've been doing. I think it helps their relationships as elected officials, understanding that the mayor's not out running rogue, doing something that I don't know anything about, and you get feelings that start to emerge. And so this way they can talk honestly with one another about, hey, Mayor, you should, if you go to this meeting, this is how we'd really like you to share that, and they can talk a little bit about that. And quite frankly, over the last 2 years, I think that's been very much appreciated by the council, but it's also been helpful for you. So, and I think that, we have our regular scheduled council meeting and work meeting on Tuesday. So we make a point to get the agenda in the council packet with all the materials out on Friday. So Friday at noon we post that, so that our council has all that time to review the material, and especially when you're new, a lot of this stuff is like really weird. Like, why are we doing this? This is so strange, I don't get it. Because, you know, they're ordinances, or what's an ordinance versus a resolution, and why is it this or that. But anyway, it gives you time to review the material, and we encourage our council and mayor, if you have any concerns or questions, call us. Call us before Tuesday, but then Tuesday we still have the opportunity to go through it one more time. And a lot of people, their jobs are just so foreign from government, a lot of the actions and things that we do inside of the council meeting, they're really odd to people. They don't understand why we have to do these kinds of things in these certain ways. And it's a good way to teach people, and it's a good way that they can learn.
It's a good way to answer questions that are come up from constituents as well. Once the agenda has been posted, if you have constituents that reach out and say, what is this? Or say, I don't like this, I don't want this, or explain this to me, whatever it is. That's an additional opportunity during the work meeting, because sometimes those don't come up very far in advance, to get some of those clarified, that then the council can report back in the meeting. I asked this came up, I was asked this came from a constituent or whoever, and here was the answer, and this is the reasoning behind it.
So is your work meeting a public meeting?
It is. It's a public
So
meeting,
anybody
yes.
can be there?
Absolutely. It's all on the record, and anyone's welcome to come.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we were discussing is doing it on our off week, so we're a week ahead of the council meeting. West Valley does something similar to that. The reason being is then you'll have time to research some things. But how does it work with you guys just doing it right before council meeting? Do you find sometimes you don't have enough time to be able to research? Or?
Yeah, because the items that are posted on the work agenda are things that the council has given me to say, we want to vet this out, or we want to look at this more in depth, or, so those things are staged.
Okay. So it's not necessarily for the.
So only a portion of the meeting is time for the mayor to have her dialogue with the council, and then a portion, which doesn't take a lot of time to go through the agenda. The rest of it's about a topic or a subject matter that we've decided that we want to delve into it more. We've either brought outside consultants in, or we have a developer coming in with a project, or it's something else that we've been working on as a staff and council together, a policy adjustment or a project or something like that, and we make presentations or do things of that nature. So we schedule those way in advance, and so, I mean, like right now, I think our work meetings are scheduled through February. So we already have things really lined out where we're gonna go with stuff. And, you know, oftentimes, I still have to make adjustments, or we come together and they say, hey, we want that on next time, and so I have to make some adjustments. But we try to do that when we can, but yeah, that's how we do it. And that's why and the other thing is, I'm trying to be somewhat, you know, this is my everyday job, right? So it's nothing for me, but for someone that has a real job, I mean, every meeting that you have to go to is something else taken away from your family, taken away from the way you make your living, or whatever else may be involved in your life. So we do try to be sensitive as a staff to our elected body in not producing a lot of meetings on top of a lot of meetings. And so, yeah, we have a long day on Tuesday, but it's just that one day of the week, and we're not coming back and back again. So I think for us, you know, everyone's going to be different, but for us, that arrangement has been satisfactory to our folks.
Our water district has their work meeting on Monday, and then they have their board meeting on Wednesday. The past council, prior to my joining the council, they had the work meeting, I think, on Monday, and then council meeting on Tuesday. So you can make it work however works for you, whatever's the most effective and efficient way to use your time, and to not only not overburden your time, but also the staff's time.